The following message is from Hillsdale Baptist Church in Advance, North Carolina. Learn more about Hillsdale by visiting their website, www.hillsdalebaptistchurch.org. Thanks for listening. Now here is the message.
All right, tonight we are continuing in Romans, or not Romans. Starts with an R. You can tell what I've been studying. So Romans we have been in, Romans 6, but Revelation 8 is where we're going to be, and we'll finish up chapter 8 today. So Revelation 8, 6 through 13, and we'll jump into that. Let's first just do a quick review of where we've been. So 2 review questions for you. The first, because we're talking about the 7th seal. So the 7th seal is best understood to contain all of the final judgments. So what does that mean? Number 2, the final 14 judgments are contained within the final seal. So what we have here is you have the 7 trumpet judgments and you have the 7 bowl judgments. They're all within this seal that's being opened here. And we don't exactly know the time frame. So we don't know if this is all going to happen in 1 month, 1 week, 2 years. We just know it's going to be somewhere toward the latter end of the 7 years. So we don't know exactly. We know they're going to be sequential, so they will follow this chronological order that's laid out. We just don't know if it's going to be first trumpet blows, second trumpet blows, third trumpet blows. The only one, I think it's the 5th, one of them is 5 months long. It does say that in the Bible. But the rest of them just simply say it opens, or the trumpet blasts, or the bowl pours out. All right, so today we're looking at, starting in verse 6, and we're going to look at 4 of the seals today. They're very straightforward, but what I found interesting is in one of the commentaries, the title of this section, instead of the 4 seals or the 4 trumpets, it's called Ecologically Destroyed. And it had this neat little topic. It says, there is a fallacy associated with the save the earth mindset. No matter what we do to save the world, God will destroy it in the end. And it's simply that, is that there's no question that fallen man has failed in his responsibility to properly care for the creation that God has given us. And we were called to be stewards of this world. That doesn't mean that we're going to destroy it, but we have to recognize it's a once-used policy. It's kind of like the throwaway cups. Whatever happens here, God, no matter how well preserved we do it, God's going to destroy it in the end. So the powerful judgments of the future time of tribulation will utterly devastate the earth, causing wholesale, unimaginable destruction of the environment. So as the time for the trumpet judgments to begin approaching, the world would have already experienced for years the frightening and relentless reality of God's wrath. So as the 7-year tribulation period unfolds, there will be wars, famines, plagues, devastating earthquakes, fiery celestial objects slamming into the earth, and a worldwide reign of terror of Antichrist. But the trumpet judgments will be even worse. So as we get into studying this, one of the things that happens, especially in my mind, and I told you, when you read the book of Revelation, you read it like a newspaper. It's very just factual. And so when you read a newspaper article, you're imagining a scene in your mind. But sometimes when you get that scene in your mind, you're just limiting your mind to the actual words on the page. One of the things that happens when we study this is we lose sight that there are people still living on the earth. People are still enduring this. So when we see fire come from heaven, when we see woods burned, when we see seas evaporated, when we see celestial stuff happen in the sky, when you see water poisoned, people are still living. And so people are actually enduring this. This is not just God taking his wrath upon the earth. This is God taking his wrath out upon people. So when we see that and we think about that, I always want you to keep in mind there are people enduring this as we read it. And we are praying that we are true and faithful in regards to pre-tribulation so that we do not have to endure this. Will you stop throwing your stuff? That's why we can't have nice stuff. Good grief. Good grief. So that leads me to number 1, is the first 4 trumpet judgments are literal events that will affect the whole earth. They are literal events that will affect the whole earth. The first 4 trumpets are described in a brief, straightforward manner. Far more details is given about the last 3. Just to prove it to you, the first 4 trumpet blasts only take up 7 verses, whereas the last 3 take up 50. So that's the reason why we can cover 4 of them just here in one night. And the 4 trumpet judgments you have to do with the earth. They are not to be taken symbolically. They are to be taken literally. So they don't symbolize political, social, economic judgments. Those judgments will come later in Revelation, though. So the first 4 trumpets do not describe any judgment that has ever happened in history or some location or region. I point that out because for those who don't know this, I don't want to sound heretical, but I actually served in a Methodist church. And a part of that Methodist church was a lot of divinity school people from Duke University and Duke University Divinity School. And one of the first things that really just poked my mind up was a professor at Duke University. This was early mid-2000s. And this divinity scholar wrote a study on Revelation, and it was pushed through all the local conferences that the book of Revelation is not to be taken literal. It is simply metaphorical, and anything that happened in the book that we read either is metaphorical or it had already happened, which kind of surprised me. And
Who determines metaphors? If you compare a metaphor to something else, who determines what it was compared to?
that's why you have this big scholar who just says, I am the truth, I am the light, and it was amazing because that's whenever I started my red flags going up. Yeah, there is a difference between Methodist and Southern Baptist, and I'm like, and I'm gonna put my anchor back down in some Southern Baptist roots. And surprisingly, that's when Hillsdale Baptist Church told me I needed to be their youth pastor, and I told them, I said, no, I don't want to be your youth pastor. Brent Helton and Dale Harlan, I told them just brief history of how I got here. I was doing music ministry at a Methodist church down the road and school teaching, and I had the month of July off. Students found out that I was off. Parents of this church, namely Larkin and Daleen, Dale had surgery on his knee, and they asked me, Jason, do you mind taking the youth? I'm not the youth pastor. Do you mind taking the youth to summer camp? And the positive was I had all of the kids in my classroom, so I knew all the kids are in the youth group minus two people. And I said, yeah, Chris and I do. I said, but I had one caveat. I said, do not offer me a job. I do not want a job at this church. I'm very content. I was in seminary at that time. I was like, just let me be a school teacher and let me be a seminarian. Krista and I just got married. I said, let me just enjoy life. And I show back up. Dale, Brent, and a couple of the elders that aren't here currently, they all were waiting for me to get home with those kids, and they all four of them offered me a job that evening. And I told them, no, I don't want no stinking job here, no. And they kept pursuing. I offered it to me twice more. I turned them down both times. Then finally in December they said, no, we think this is what you need to be doing. And Chris and I were like, oh, okay. So 2010, January 1, I became the youth pastor here and then started full-time in the 2012. So all of that's history, though. Okay, so with that said, Revelation 6, or 8, verse 6 starts here, the first trumpet. So the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared to blow them, the first angel blew his trumpet, and hail and fire mixed with blood were hurled to the earth. So a third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Number 2, hail and fire are frequently associated with divine judgment. So you can think back to all your Old Testament stories. Anytime you see hail or you see fire, you're going to see, I think of Sodom and Gomorrah is the one where my brain goes to instantly. It's always going to be some sort of divine judgment with that. So as the angel blows, we are toward the end of the time of tribulation, and out of the sky comes hail and fire. Now, we don't know much more than that. I mean, that's just, like I said, it's very simple. So literal hail and fire comes from it. But there is a unique one. Verse 7, the first angel blew the trumpet, and hail and fire, and here's the interesting, mixed with blood was hurled to the earth. So the combination of fire mixed with blood is reminiscent of Joel 2. And that verse says this. Joel 2, verse 30 says, I will display wonders in heavens and on earth, blood, fire, and columns of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. So again, it's judgment based. So again, we have that there. There's a creationist PhD or a doctor. His name is Henry Morris. I've quoted him before. He's passed away, but he was a pastor in a Southern Baptist church and just fantastic guy. And he's done a lot of creation history. And he wrote a commentary on this section of Revelation. And he wrote specifically about this verse. It is possible that worldwide volcanic explosions would be a normal consequence of a worldwide violent earthquake, because that's just what happened. The masses of water vapor blown skyward might well condense in the intense updraft as hailstones and showers of burning lava might will be cast upon the earth. Now here's his idea about the blood. The blood of entrapped men and angels might be mingled with them, or possibly showers of liquid water drops might be so contaminated with dust and gases as to appear blood red. So it's an idea of it. Again, it's an idea. But what's the result of this first trumpet blast? And that's what number 3 is. The result of the first trumpet is 1/3 of vegetation being destroyed. The result of the first trumpet judgment is 1/3 of vegetation being destroyed. So 1/3 of the earth will be burned from this hail and fire mixed with blood. So the shocking results was that 1/3 of the earth was burned up, rendering the soil in which crops are cultivated, completely destroying it. 1/3 of the trees were burned up, destroying fruit all over the earth. All the green grass was burned up. So the fire falling from the sky kindled raging infernos that consumed 1/3 of the earth's vegetation and forest. So again, just imagine that. Right now we have wildfires in Texas. And you see the amount, you just see how that affects everything that exists. So not only are wildfires devastating to the forest and to the ground, but also anything that's around them. You see animals die during that time. You see people die. You see structures destroyed. So that's what's going to happen with this trumpet judgment coming down there. And mankind has failed to recognize and honor God as creator, choosing instead to make a god out of the earth. But the environmental, evolutionary pantheism that devalues man, elevates animals and plants, and ignores the creator, ultimately will be judged. Not only will their source of life be taken, but their God will be destroyed, for their God is creation itself. So we transition now to the second angel blowing. So verse 8 and 9. The second angel blew his trumpet, and something like a great mountain, ablaze with fire, was hurled into the sea. So 1/3 of the sea became blood. 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. So number 4, the first trumpet dealt with the land. The second trumpet deals with the sea, or ocean, if you want to say that too. So God created the sea to be a blessing to mankind, to provide food, oxygen, water for the rainstorms that would come from the evaporated oceans. But people have repaid God's gracious provisions with ingratitude and idolatry, worshiping the sea, worshiping and thinking that our evolutionary roots came from the sea. And as he devastated the land, God is going to truly show that he is the God not only of the land, but also the land of the sea. Now, it's interesting. I like my translation. It says, something like a great mountain ablaze with fire was hurled into the sea. That's amazing to me. I mean, just because I imagine, in my mind, Everest coming down. I mean, I can't imagine it. So this is evidently a great meteor or an asteroid surrounded by flaming gases set ablaze by the friction of the Earth's atmosphere as it collides with the earth, and it will hit, striking somewhere in the world's oceans with an explosive power far greater than that of an atomic bomb. Because of all the world's oceans are connected, the devastation from that hit will spread across 1/3 of the ocean's water, causing 1/3 of the sea to become blood. And just that was the thought that was new to me when I studied this chapter, was I didn't really think about the interconnectedness of the seas, because there was a great illustration that I saw online of like the earthquake that hit the Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan, and it was like an 8.1, 8.9 earthquake in the middle. Basically, the Earth's shelf went like this, so it raised up. The Earth's crust raised up as the Asian plate went under, and this massive earthquake and tsunami moved. But it did this illustration of how that tsunami moved around the world. So it actually traced, because we have enough sensors now around the world that you can actually see it. So you actually see in an expedited time of how that earthquake's epicenter happened, went to Japan, but then you see it go all the way across the Pacific, hit Hawaii, hit the United States. You even see it go all the way down to southern Chile. And then for the realization of me of like, if something really happened, like in regards to this, no body of water or no land that's on a shoreline is safe, because unless a body gets in the way, but it's still a mountain coming from the sky, that's pretty scary. That leads to number 5. As with the first trumpet, since it's impossible to say whether the blood was miraculously deposited into it. Again, I like taking things literal, but at the same time too, this is descriptive. So there's a possibility this is a descriptive thing, not necessarily a literal thing. So you can say there was a very simple statement that the waters of the sea became blood, and we don't really know what that means. Perhaps more likely the death of countless billions of sea creatures, as 1/3 of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, could certainly account for the reddish tinge of the water. Whether it's the reflection of gassy light in the sky, or whether it's chemical changes that occur when the continents hit the sea or the mountain hits the sea, whether it's the death of microorganisms, we just don't know. But there are lots of visions that have been given to Old Testament prophets of this event. So, for example, Hosea 4 says, "Cursing, lying, murder, stealing, and adultery are rampant. One act of bloodshed follows another. For this reason the land mourns, and everyone who lives in it languishes, along with the wild animals and the birds of the sea. Even the fish of the sea will disappear." Zephaniah 1 says, "I will completely sweep away everything from the face of the earth." This is the Lord's declaration. "I will sweep away people and animals. I will sweep away the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea, and the ruins among the wicked. I will cut off mankind from the face of the earth." This is the Lord's declaration. So the impact will generate unimaginably huge tsunamis. And those giant waves will destroy 1/3 of the ships that are in the oceans at that time too. Huge ocean-going vessels will be completely swamped, and ports of entry will also be destroyed. So the resulting distribution of commerce and transport will cause an economic clash or a crash. So again, not just imagine the physical happen, but imagine the impact of this on everything that goes on in the world. Because even during the 7 years of time, governments and powers are going to still try to maintain order. And a way of maintaining order is to keep economy going and to keep trade going, to have capitalism still keep going. And God's going to destroy it. Just going to flat out destroy it. So we move to the third trumpet, verse 10. "The third angel blew his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from heaven. It fell on 1/3 of the rivers and the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood, and 1/3 of the waters became wormwood. So many of the people died from the waters because they had been made bitter." So the third trumpet will affect fresh water. So you see how we had the land punished, the sea punished, and now we're going to punish the fresh water. So another flaming object is hurled toward the earth. Aster is the Greek word here, and it can refer to any celestial body that's not the sun or moon. So some sort of celestial something. So the third angel here, adds to the celestial fanfare with a giant asteroid star. It simply means some kind of celestial body, and the word from that is where we get the word asteroid from. So the massive object that smashed into the ocean in the last trumpet blast, it remained intact. Whereas this one, the object is going to disintegrate so that it can spread out around the world. So this great star burns like a torch, and when we see this blazing like a torch, in ancient times and ancient Near East writings, blazing like a torch is how they described comets. It's how they described meteorites. Anything that hits the atmosphere and starts to burn like a shooting star, it would be described as a blazing torch in the writings. So we can say that this is most likely a comet or asteroid of some sort coming in, a meteorite type of thing. Now, the interesting thing about this verse is even though it's very sparse in the details, verse 11 always stood out to me because it actually gives a name. So we have to figure out the name of the star is wormwood. Why in the world would they use the word wormwood? Where is that used? How is that used? So if we have to do a study of it, first thing I do is I go to the original language that it was written in. So I want to figure out what wormwood is in what language is the New Testament written in. Starts with a G and ends with eek. Greek. And literally in Greek, the word is as apsinthos. Absinthos. Absinthos. It's also what we translate the liquor to absence. So, and this is, and the unique thing, this is the only time in the New Testament this word is used. So this word is only used in the New Testament once. Now the term, so if you're doing like, to show you the background of how I study, so you find the Greek, and then I always want to look at how many times is it used in the New Testament. So I can relate it to, does it have the same meaning throughout the New Testament? Well, this one was only used once. So then my question was, well, how many times has this word been used in the Old Testament, but in Hebrew? So the Hebrew word is Laanah, Laanah. Huh. That's the. Can you tell I got my degree from online? And so, but that word is translated often in the Old Testament. The King James, if you saw that word in the King James, it would actually use the word hemlock. So hemlock is used often. So anytime you see the word hemlock, you're going to be seeing that's the translation there, which is also what we can also classify as wormwood. But simply put, the reason why that word is used, it's a poison. So when we see that word, the wormwood is a specific poison. It's a poison derived from some kind of root. Deuteronomy 29, Proverbs 5, Lamentations 3, all of that point out that wormwood refers to something bitter, some poison that is actually deadly. So whatever poison it is, we know that it is lethal. Now, if we look at the first two trumpets, it doesn't say anything about humans dying. But this one does say that many men die from the waters because they're poisonous. And so this will have a toll on people. And so the good thing to think about, we're talking about fresh water here. So a lot of people can live without crops. Many people can live without having an ocean nearby, but nobody can live without fresh water. And so a way to think about this, all of the water is poisoned. So that means the rivers that are still running are poisoned. The wells that are dug or the wells that are there are full, but it's poisoned. And the lakes are poisoned. You can't drink. You're going to suffer. So the devastation caused by the first three trumpet judgments will leave the earth's inhabitants in a state of shock and fear. And the death of many is only an indirect result of those first 3 blasts. The direct killing of sinners come from the 6th trumpet. So we don't actually see the trumpets blowing yet until we get to the 6th trumpet that actually kills somebody intentionally. This is all indirect death. So all this happens simply because men have rejected the gospel being preached. So the rest of the world has rejected him. The longer the wait, the harder the hearts will get. And the longer they fight it, the longer they resist, the harder their hearts become, so that at the end they still will not repent. If they can survive all of this and not turn to God, their hearts are indeed hardened. So now we look at the 4th trumpet blast, verse 12. The 4th angel blew his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day was without light, and a third of night, or also a third of the night. I looked and heard an eagle flying overhead, crying out in a loud voice, "Woe, woe, woe to those who live on the earth, because of the remaining trumpet blasts that the 3 angels are about to sound." So number 8, the heavenly bodies are hit with a plague from God. This was an interesting word study for me. So you see, so that a third of them were darkened. So that's where I was studying that word at the end of the first sentence. So that a third of them were darkened. In some translations, you would have the word smitten. It was just a fun word to look up. It's like, what does smitten mean? And so I looked that one up, and it's the word placio in Greek, and that's the verb form from which the noun we get the word plague. So we can read it: a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon was struck, and a third of the stars were struck, so that a third of them were plagued. Now the attention moves away from the earth. We've dealt with the land, salt water, fresh water, and now everyone's attention is drawn upward. There's a partial eclipse that strikes the sun, the moon, and the stars. It'll all be reduced by a third. Now we do know that this is temporal, though. We do know it's temporal because in Revelation 16, God is going to turn the thermostat up on the sun, and he's going to make it unbearable for people to live on the earth. So we know that this is a temporal way. So somehow the Lord is going to block out 1/3 of the sun, moon, and stars. I have no idea how that happens. It's kind of like when we were describing the scroll will open and the skies will part like a scroll rolling back. Again, it's imagery. We just can't figure it out. Same way for this is, how in the world does God turn off a third of everything in the sky? I don't know. It's God. That's what it comes down to. It's God. He what? That's right. It's kind of like a dad in a house. I walk around, turn it off! Turn it off! Ain't nobody in here, turn it off! I'm starting to feel like Dub. Anytime, my favorite thing when Dub in his generosity came back as an assistant principal at North Davie when I was teaching there, my office was in the back of the room, in the very back of the room. And I'm in that room, and I'm in there working, but I'm in my office, which was basically a little sound room. And I'm out in there working, I'm concentrating and working on this in the afternoon. Next thing I know, my light just go off. And because Dub walks in my room, ain't nobody in here, turns it off. And then so I go back out there, it's like, I'm in this room. And I turn it on, and then like about 10 minutes later, he's doing another circle. And then it's like, like, Dub! Or it's Mr. Potts at that time, Mr. Potts! Come on. You have a little more leeway than I do. No matter what, I always point back. We gotta give Mr. Dub some credit. He was superintendent of the school system when they hired me. So Mr. Dub is the one who allowed me to come to this county. So we thank Mr. Potts for that. All right, so we also get an idea that God also is helping other prophets see this. So Isaiah 13, in Isaiah 13, 9 through 13, Isaiah gets, and it says this: "Look, the day of the Lord is coming, cruel with fury and burning anger, to make the earth a desolate and to destroy its sinners. Indeed, the stars of the skies and its constellations will not give their light. The sun will be dark when it rises, and the moon will not shine. I will punish the world for its evil and wicked people for their iniquities. I will put an end to the pride of their arrogance and humiliate the insolence of tyrants. I will make a human more scarce than fine gold, and mankind more rare than gold of the Orphan. Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will shake from its foundations at the wrath of the Lord of the armies on the day of his burning anger. He's prepping. He's prepping the world to know what's going to come. And that leads us to last thought, number 9. The most threatening word used by any prophet in the Bible is what? Woe. Anytime you see the word woe, you see death. Woe. And most of the time in the Bible, you see things doubled. So like if we wanted to see, like if God really wanted to emphasize something, he would say the word twice. And so it would be woe, woe. But in this situation, how many woes do you have? That's the trifecta of death. So could anything be worse than what's about to happen? That's when we get to verse 13. The dimming of the celestial lights set the stage for a startling and ominous announcement. The imagery is that of a strong bird of prey rushing to consume its victim, in this case referring to the rapid approach of God's final vengeance. And its loud voice assures that all people will be able to hear this proclamation. There we go. Thank you for reading my mind. So with the double woes are used for emphasis, this eagle's triple pronouncement of 3 woes introduces one threat for each of the remaining 3 trumpets about to sound. So there's 3 trumpet sounds that are about to come. So the eagle is saying, woe, woe, woe. 3 more judgments are going to be coming. So God's wrath and judgment will come upon those who live on the earth. So this descriptive phrase is used in Revelation as a technical term for those who reject the gospel. Although they will acknowledge that the disasters they are experiencing have come from God, they still will not repent. So the final thought simply is the first 4 trumpets are unimaginable, but they're still not going to compare to the next 3 that come. Any questions?
This isn't a question, but when you were talking about the
Fukushima.
yeah, when that big earthquake came and the tsunami, I didn't know, but I heard it, that when the fires were going to Texas, they came in with a mile of the nuclear plant there. And people knew there was a nuclear plant, so they started praying.
Yeah.
And
the snow came. Yeah, they posted pictures of it and says God answers prayers because unseasonably for that panhandle area they don't have snow. Then all of a sudden God sends a snowstorm to them and puts it off. God's amazing. God's amazing. Prayer is amazing. Just put that there. Prayer is amazing. Any other questions? Any epiphanies from tonight? France, good to have you back.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Good to be back.
Something that may be flaky. Okay. There is a meteor out there called Apophis, which is another translation of wormwood.
Right.
Really?
April 13th, 2025.
When?
2029. April 13th, 2025.
The NASA's trying to downplay it, but they've got it under.
It says it's not supposed to hit, they made the image that way.
I will tell you one of my favorite, most recent NASA experiments. I'm loving, I think I've told you before, when I went to college, I originally went to be a physics major. My goal was to work for NASA. I was going to work at the Jet Propulsion Lab. That was one of my major goals, and really wanted to do that, go with it. And I'm loving how NASA puts all their stuff online now. And so they had one recent one that they sent a probe into space, but it was a collision probe. And so what they wanted to try to see is that the idea is that if they can spot an asteroid far enough away, they don't have to send a nuclear bomb up there to blow it up like the movies would do. All you need is have a relatively good-sized projectile, like a bullet, and you send it into space, and all you have to do, if you get it far enough away, you have to nudge it off course just a little bit, and then it will change its direction. So I think it was about 6 or 7, it was during the summer. The kids and I were watching the live stream online because they had a live camera on the front of the bullet, and and you see this over. I mean, it was really, you see it. It was about an hour's worth of watching. And you watch it, and it's like you see this object, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then all of a sudden, you see nothing, and you realize like we just hit an asteroid. It's like it's like America is awesome. It's like people shoot down satellites. Our people, they knock out asteroids, and it changed the direction. It just knocked it off just slight a bit. So it was the first object in space that we as humans have actually able to move and intercepted. No, they won't be able to do that one. They won't be able to do that one. All right, with all that said, let me close this in prayer. Heavenly Father.